There is a moment, usually late at night, when the world feels quiet enough to hear truths that are normally drowned out by noise. It's in that silence that stories about power feel different, heavier, more human. Because when we hear the name Kim Jong Un, most of us don't picture a person sitting alone with his thoughts. We picture a symbol, a headline, a mystery wrapped in distance. But behind the carefully controlled images, beyond the parades and official portraits, exists a private world that almost no one is allowed to see. A world shaped by luxury, isolation, fear, and absolute control. And the unsettling part isn't just that this world exists. It's that it has been deliberately built to feel untouchable. What makes this story so gripping isn't extravagance by itself. Wealth and comfort exist everywhere. What pulls you in is contrast. On one side, a country known for uniformity, discipline, and sacrifice. On the other, a leader whose private life is designed around exclusivity, pleasure, and security. This contrast creates a psychological gap that's impossible to ignore. And once you notice it, you start seeing everything differently. The food, the travel, the architecture, the routines, even the silence around him. None of it is accidental. Every detail serves a purpose, not just to protect power, but to reinforce it. Kim Jong Un was born into a reality that very few humans on Earth will ever experience. From his earliest days, the world around him was controlled, curated, and filtered. He didn't grow up wondering what he would become. That decision had already been made for him. But what's rarely discussed is how that certainty shapes a person's inner world. When your future is guaranteed, when authority is inherited rather than earned, your relationship with reality changes. Risk feels distant. Consequences feel abstract. Comfort becomes normal. And over time, normal becomes invisible. As he grew older, the spaces around him grew larger, quieter, and more protected. Private residences hidden behind layers of security. Transportation routes cleared long before he arrived. Environments where nothing unexpected could happen. Luxury here isn't just about enjoyment. It's about insulation. When a leader never waits in line, never hears criticism, never experiences uncertainty, their sense of the world becomes narrower, even as their control expands. Food alone tells a revealing story. While official imagery emphasizes simplicity and strength, reports from defectors and observers paint a different picture behind closed doors. Carefully sourced ingredients. Dedicated staff whose sole purpose is to ensure perfection. Meals designed not just to nourish, but to reassure. In psychology, routine comfort is a stabilizer. It grounds identity. For someone living under constant pressure, surrounded by loyalty that may be forced rather than chosen, these rituals become anchors. They offer predictability in a life where trust is always uncertain. Luxury, in this context, is not random indulgence. It is strategic. It creates separation. The more different a leader's daily life is from the people they govern, the easier it becomes to rule from abstraction rather than empathy. When you don't see struggle, you don't feel urgency. When hardship is theoretical, decisions become colder, more distant. This doesn't require cruelty. It only requires distance. And distance, once normalized, is powerful. Travel offers another window into this hidden world. While the average citizen's movement is restricted, the leader's movement is carefully orchestrated for maximum safety and control. Trains reinforced beyond standard engineering. Routes inspected in advance. Timing calculated to the minute. This isn't just about protection. It's about predictability. Control over environment reduces vulnerability, and reduced vulnerability reinforces confidence. Over time, that confidence can harden into certainty, and certainty can become inflexibility. Yet even in these controlled environments, isolation quietly grows. Absolute power doesn't eliminate fear. It transforms it. Instead of fearing failure, one fears betrayal. Instead of fearing loss, one fears unpredictability. This is where luxury and paranoia begin to coexist. The more comfortable the surroundings, the more noticeable any disruption becomes. Silence becomes suspicious. Loyalty becomes performative. And trust becomes rare. The private life of someone like Kim Jong Un isn't loud. It's quiet. Highly managed. carefully staged. Every interaction filtered through protocol. Every relationship defined by hierarchy. In such a world, genuine connection becomes almost impossible. And when connection disappears, reflection often replaces it. Leaders surrounded by yes voices can begin to mistake agreement for truth. Over time, this shapes decision-making in subtle but lasting ways. What's fascinating is how this private world feeds the public image. Displays of strength, confidence, and certainty are easier to project when your personal environment never challenges you. When discomfort is optional, resilience becomes symbolic rather than tested. And symbols are powerful tools. They don't need to be real to be effective. They just need to be consistent. There is also the inherited weight of legacy. Kim Jong Un didn't just inherit a position. He inherited expectations, myths, and an entire narrative already written. Luxury in this context serves another role. It reinforces continuity. It signals stability. It says, nothing has changed, control remains intact. Even the smallest personal choices become political signals when power is absolute. Yet beneath all of this lies a human reality that often goes unspoken. A life where privacy exists only behind layers of surveillance. Where freedom is theoretical. Where every moment is observed, recorded, and evaluated. In such an environment, luxury can feel less like freedom and more like compensation. A substitute for normalcy. A way to fill the emotional space left by isolation. As viewers, we are drawn to stories like this because they force us to confront uncomfortable questions. Does power inevitably separate? Does comfort dull awareness? Does control protect, or does it imprison? The answers aren't simple, and that's why the story holds attention. Every detail invites reflection. Not just about one leader, but about power itself. And here's the part that keeps people watching. This private world doesn't exist in isolation. It shapes policy, posture, and perception. Decisions made in quiet rooms echo across borders. Choices influenced by comfort ripple outward into real consequences. When leaders live far from the realities of their people, the gap doesn't just stay personal. It becomes structural. What's rarely acknowledged is how fragile such systems can be. The more centralized the power, the more dependent it becomes on a single perspective. And when that perspective is filtered through luxury and isolation, adaptability decreases. History shows that systems built on absolute certainty often struggle with change. Not because change is impossible, but because it feels unnecessary right up until it isn't. Still, it's important to approach this story with clarity rather than judgment. Simplifying complex realities into villains and heroes doesn't help us understand anything. The goal isn't outrage. It's insight. To see how environments shape people, how power reshapes psychology, and how comfort can both protect and blind. As this story continues, the question isn't just how Kim Jong Un lives, but what that lifestyle represents. It reflects a broader truth about authority and human nature. About how distance alters perception. About how control changes priorities. And about how even the most protected lives are shaped by unseen pressures. Because behind the walls, beyond the ceremonies, and beneath the image of absolute confidence, exists a quiet tension. A balance between control and vulnerability. Between certainty and doubt. And it's in that tension that the real story lives. Not in the headlines, but in the spaces between them. That tension becomes clearer when you look at how carefully time itself is managed. Days are structured, appearances planned far in advance, spontaneity minimized. When nothing is left to chance, life can feel smooth on the surface while becoming rigid underneath. This kind of existence trains the mind to value control above curiosity. When outcomes are predetermined, exploration loses its appeal. And over years, that mindset can quietly reshape how a person interprets reality, turning uncertainty into something to be avoided rather than understood. There is also the subtle influence of constant affirmation. In environments built around hierarchy, praise flows upward while doubt disappears downward. Over time, this creates an echo. Decisions feel validated before they are even tested. Confidence becomes self-reinforcing. And when luxury cushions every experience, feedback loses its edge. Without resistance, perspective narrows. Not because intelligence fades, but because challenge does. Growth requires friction, And friction is the one thing this private world is designed to eliminate. Even leisure carries weight here. Entertainment isn't just entertainment. It's controlled stimulation. Carefully selected experiences that reinforce comfort and familiarity. In psychology, novelty keeps the mind flexible. Predictability keeps it calm. A life optimized for calm can quietly reduce adaptability. And while that calm may look like strength from the outside, internally it can foster dependence on routine. Change, when it eventually arrives, feels larger than it really is. What's striking is how invisible this becomes to the person living it. When luxury is all you've known, it doesn't feel excessive. It feels normal. That normalization is powerful. It allows extraordinary conditions to feel ordinary, and ordinary hardships to feel distant. Over time, empathy can shift from lived understanding to abstract concept. Concern exists, but it's filtered through layers of separation. This is where the idea of power becomes most interesting. Power isn't just about command. It's about perception. The ability to define what matters, what's urgent, and what can wait. A private life insulated by comfort subtly reshapes those priorities. Urgency becomes selective. Problems that don't enter the protected space feel less immediate. And decisions made from that distance can feel logical internally, even when they feel disconnected externally. Observers often wonder whether such a life feels secure or suffocating. The truth is, it's usually both at once. Protection and confinement are two sides of the same system. The walls that keep threats out also keep freedom in. And when your role defines every movement, even luxury can begin to feel like a controlled environment rather than a choice. This duality creates a quiet psychological pressure. Maintaining an image requires consistency. Any deviation becomes noticeable. Any uncertainty becomes risky. Over time, this can encourage caution disguised as confidence. Stability becomes the highest value, not because change is impossible, but because it's unpredictable. And unpredictability is the one thing this private world cannot easily absorb. What keeps people fascinated by this story isn't just secrecy. It's relatability at a distance. The emotions involved are human. The desire for safety, recognition, comfort, and control. The scale is different, but the instincts are familiar. And recognizing that similarity makes the story feel closer, more unsettling, and harder to dismiss. As we continue to examine this hidden life, it becomes less about luxury itself and more about what luxury replaces. When connection is limited, comfort fills the space. When trust is rare, control compensates. And when reality feels distant, symbols become anchors. None of this happens overnight. It accumulates slowly, quietly, until it feels permanent. And yet, no system is static. Environments change. Contexts shift. And even the most insulated lives are influenced by forces beyond their control. The real question isn't whether this private world can last forever. It's how it shapes the decisions made within it, right now, in moments we never see. Because ultimately, the most powerful forces aren't always loud. They are subtle. They work through habits, routines, and assumptions. And understanding those forces doesn't just explain one leader's life. It offers insight into how power, comfort, and isolation interact anywhere in the world. As the story moves forward, keep that in mind. Not as judgment, but as awareness. Because the deeper truth isn't hidden in luxury or secrecy. It's hidden in how environments shape thinking. And once you see that, you start noticing it everywhere.